Brussels greeted me with rain and gray skies, which pretty much matched my mood after 3 days of negotiations with suppliers. I was sitting in a cafe near the hotel, finishing my cold coffee and reviewing the latest documents for the deal, when the phone rang. The number was Canadian, but unfamiliar. "Hello? Is this Yvette Cribbles?" The woman's voice sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it right away. "Yes, speaking." "This is Gloria Pendleton. I live next door to your house on Maple Street." We've talked a couple of times over the fence. Now I remember. An elderly woman with 3 cats who always knew all the neighborhood news. "Oh, yes, of course. Is something wrong?" "Well, I don't know if I should have called, but I thought it was strange. The day before yesterday, a car with a real estate sign pulled up to your house. This morning, I saw a young man with keys go inside, and then he brought furniture. I felt a chill run down my spine. I'm sorry. What exactly did you see? It looks like your house has been sold. There was even a for sale sign on the lawn. I thought maybe you forgot to tell me." The phone almost slipped out of my hands. I tried to speak calmly, even though my heart was racing. "Thank you for calling. I'll look into it." I hung up and immediately dialed my mother's number. There were long beeps, then her dissatisfied voice. "Yvette? Why are you calling at this hour? It's almost nighttime. Mom, what's going on with my house?" Pause. Too long a pause. "What are you talking about?" "The neighbor called. She said the house was sold." Another pause. Then I heard my mother say something to my father, covering the phone with her hand. But I still heard the words she found out. "Listen, we'll talk when you get back. Now is not the time for—" "Mom, I'm asking you directly, is my house sold?" "Yvette, don't yell at me. Yes, we decided to sell it. You don't live there anyway. You're always traveling. And we needed the money urgently." I looked at the rain outside the cafe window and couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What right did you have? It's my house." "Oh, come on. We're your parents. Besides, we had all the documents. You gave them to us yourself when you sold the apartment." It was true. 2 years ago, when Aunt Priscilla died and left me the house, I did give my parents copies of the documents, just in case they needed anything while I was away. I didn't think they were capable of such a thing. "How much did you get?" "What are you, an interrogator?" $200,000. A very good price, by the way. I knew the house was worth at least $300, but now it didn't matter. "Where's the money?" "What's it to you? We spent it on our needs. Your father had debts to pay, and I needed a few things." My mother spoke as if she were talking about buying groceries, not stealing my property. "Do you realize you've committed a crime?" "Oh, stop being so dramatic. What crime?" "We're your parents. We have the right to do what we want with our property." "You have no right to my property." "Calm down. What are you, a little girl? The house is sold. It's done. The money is spent. Why are you stirring things up now?" I hung up because I was afraid I would say something I would regret. My hands were shaking with anger and helplessness. My parents sold my house and didn't even bother to apologize. I tried to call my father, but he didn't answer. Then I called my mother again. "Mom, give me my father." "He's busy." "Mom, give him the phone right now." "Listen, Yvette, don't tell me what to do. Your father and I have thought it through and made the right decision. You're 22 years old. I'm 32. So what? You're not married, you don't have any children, you live who knows where. We need the money more. Your father has problems at work. He could be laid off. You're young, you'll earn money. Problems at work? What problems? They have a new owner. They say everything could change, so we decided to play it safe." Interesting. So the Ontario Fresh Market where my parents worked had changed management. This was the first I'd heard of it, even though I worked for the same chain, just at the head office. "Do you know who the new owner is?" "How should I know? Some rich guy bought the whole chain. They say he's young. He'll probably fire all the old employees and hire young people." My mother didn't know that I was the rich guy. The deal was finalized a week ago while I was here in Brussels. The lawyers had finalized all the paperwork, and now Ontario Fresh Market belonged to me. It was a risky move. I had invested all my savings plus the money from selling shares in tech companies that I had bought in the early 2000s, and which had grown significantly in value. My parents had no idea about my investments. To them, I was still just a simple purchasing manager who earned a regular salary and was nothing special. "Mom, we'll talk when I get back." "There's nothing to talk about. It's done, and that's that. And don't even think about making a scene. You won't change anything." After the conversation, I sat in a cafe for a long time watching the rain. My parents had stolen my house and didn't even consider it wrong. They were sure that I couldn't do anything about it, that I was too weak, too submissive, too dependent on them. They were wrong. I took out my laptop and opened the documents for the purchase of the retail chain. Everything was in order, the money had been transferred, and I was now the legal owner of 40 stores and a distribution center. The employees didn't know about the change of ownership yet. The announcement was planned for the following week after my return. Among these employees were my parents. My father had been working as a storekeeper in a shop on the outskirts of the city for 8 years. My mother had been a cashier at the same store for the last 5 years. Both considered their positions secure, and me a failure who would never achieve anything significant in life. Tomorrow, I'm going home, and then we'll see who really is in control. The plane landed at Pearson Airport at 6:30 in the morning. I hadn't slept all night, going over the upcoming conversation with my parents in my head. Outside the window, a familiar landscape floated by, gray roofs, yellow fields, and scattered patches of forest. Home, which was no longer mine. I took a bus to the city. My parents lived in a small neighborhood house that they had been renting for 10 years. My father always said that buying a house was a waste of money, that it was better to rent and save up for something worthwhile. The truth was, they never had any savings. I walked up to the door and rang the bell. It was around 9 in the morning, too early for my parents on a weekend, but I wanted to get this conversation over with as quickly as possible. My father opened the door. Dalton Cribbles was a short 58-year-old man with a round belly and a perpetually dissatisfied expression on his face. He used to work as a mechanic at a car repair shop, but after a conflict with the owner, he switched to sales. At his new job, he also regularly quarreled with his bosses, but he didn't dare quit. At his age, it was difficult to find another job. "Oh, it's you," he grumbled, letting me into the house. "You're up early." The smell of fried bacon wafted from the kitchen. His mother was making breakfast, humming to herself. Bernice Cribbles was an energetic and talkative woman who liked to be in control and considered herself the center of any group. Working as a cashier, she knew all the regular customers and their family affairs better than they did themselves. "Yvette," she exclaimed, peeking out of the kitchen. "We were expecting you tomorrow." "I flew in early. We need to talk." "Of course we'll talk. Sit down and have breakfast." My mother looked surprisingly cheerful for someone who had just robbed her own daughter. She put eggs on our plates, chatted about how cold it was this fall, and seemed to have completely forgotten about our conversation the day before. "So, the house is sold," I said, sitting down at the table. "Oh, don't jump to conclusions," my mother dismissed me. "Eat first, and then we'll talk calmly." "Mom, I want to talk now." My father cut the bacon silently, but I could see his shoulders tense up. He clearly didn't want this conversation. "All right," my mother sighed, sitting down opposite me. "Yes, we sold the house, and you know what? It was the right thing to do. You don't live there anyway. You rent an apartment near your work, and the house is just sitting there. It's not sensible." "It was my house. Aunt Priscilla left it to me." "Aunt Priscilla was my sister," said his mother in a tone that seemed to explain everything. "And besides, what good is that house? It's old and needs repairs. We have debts and problems at work. We made a practical decision. Without my consent." "Oh, come on!" My mother waved her hand. "What consent? You don't understand anything about these things. Your father and I have experience. We know what's best." My father finally raised his head. "Yvette, don't make a mountain out of a molehill." We needed the money urgently. I had a loan to pay off, and the interest was piling up. And now there was a new boss at work. Who knows what he's thinking? They might start laying people off, and at my age, it's hard to find a new job. "How much debt did you have?" "50,000, he muttered. "Where did the rest of the money go?" My parents exchanged glances. My mother smoothed her hair, a gesture I knew well. She always did that when she was nervous. "Well, We put some aside for a rainy day, and I needed to buy something. A new car, for example. My old one is falling apart. I looked out the window. A red Honda Accord was parked in the driveway. Clearly not a cheap car. How much did the car cost? What does it matter to you? My mother snapped. We don't have to answer to you. We're your parents and you're our daughter. And anyway, what are you going to do? Take us to court? She laughed. You don't have money for a lawyer. That laugh was the worst. It sounded contemptuous, confident in my helplessness. Mom, you stole my house. Stole, she snorted. Such big words. We disposed of family property in the interests of the family. You're part of the family, aren't you? The house wasn't family property. It was mine. On paper, yes, but in reality, it's ours. We raised you, fed you, clothed you. We gave you an education, so consider this repayment of a debt. My father nodded in agreement with his wife. Ivet, be realistic. What can you do? The house has already been sold. The paperwork has been done. The money has been spent. The matter is closed. And besides, added his mother, you're not a child. You're 32 years old and still living like a student. You rent an apartment. You have no property, no serious job. I have a serious job. A purchasing manager, her mother said contemptuously. That's not a career, it's just a position. You're not the boss, you don't own the business. How much do you make? $3,000 a month? 4? That's barely enough to live on. She didn't know how much I actually earned, and she didn't know about my investments. To my parents, I was still a failure who couldn't start a family, hadn't achieved career success, and had basically wasted her life. And now you're homeless, my father sneered. But what does it matter? You didn't live there anyway. My things were there. What things? My mother asked in surprise. Aunt Priscilla's old furniture? We sold it with the house, and you hardly had any things there. Just a few boxes of books and some winter clothes. We packed everything up and it's in the garage. So they didn't even bother to tell me so I could pick up my things. They just decided for me what I needed and what I didn't. Listen, Yvette, said her mother, getting up from the table. Stop sulking. What's done is done. We did what was best for everyone. You couldn't afford to maintain the house anyway. Taxes, repairs, all that costs money. Now you can live peacefully in your little apartment and not worry about anything. She spoke as if she had done me a favor, as if she had relieved me of a burden. And besides, my father added, the money isn't gone, it stayed in the family. We're not strangers. Yes, my mother chimed in, and if anything happens, we'll help you. Family is family. They really didn't understand that they had done something wrong. In their worldview, they had every right to dispose of my property because they were my parents, and I was supposed to thank them for their concern. Okay, I said, getting up. I have to go to work. On Saturday? My mother asked in surprise. Yes, I have some things to finish after my business trip. You see, she said to my father, all she cares about is work. When are you going to get married? When are you going to have children? Time is passing. I didn't answer. I turned at the door and looked back at my parents. They were sitting at the table, looking pleased with themselves. My mother was humming something under her breath again, and my father was leafing through the newspaper. It was a typical Saturday morning in their orderly life. On Monday morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The Ontario Fresh Market building stood in an industrial area, a gray box of glass and concrete, unremarkable from the outside, but inside it was a hive of activity on which 40 stores across the province depended. My office was on the 3rd floor, in the purchasing department. It was a small room with a single window overlooking the parking lot. On my desk were stacks of documents that had accumulated during my absence, supplier invoices, sales reports, and orders for new products. It was the usual routine that had once been the foundation of my life. Now everything had changed. I wasn't just a purchasing manager. I was the owner of all this. At 8:30, my colleagues began to arrive. I could hear snatches of conversation through the thin walls. Everyone was discussing the same topic. They say the new owner is really young, came the voice of Roxy Glendale from the next office. She worked with dairy suppliers and was always up to date on the latest gossip. Where did you hear that? someone else asked. Merv from accounting told me. He said he saw the documents. Some private investor bought the whole chain. Merv Whitlock was in charge of the finance department and did indeed have access to the deal documents. But he couldn't know the details. The lawyers had arranged the purchase through a shell company to maintain confidentiality. What about the employees? That was the voice of Dwight Fishburne, the logistics manager. He was in his 50s and terrified of losing his job. We don't know yet, but new owners usually bring in their own people. They might lay some people off. I opened the folder with the documents and began studying the company's financial reports. Over the past 3 years, Ontario Fresh Market had been operating at a small profit, but the potential was much greater. The previous owner, Walter Biggins, was a conservative man who preferred stability to growth. Many decisions were made slowly, and new technologies were implemented late. At 10 in the morning, the phone rang. It was her mother. Yvette, are you at work? Yes, Mom. Listen, do you happen to know what's going on there? They say your chain has been bought by a new owner. Interesting. The news had reached the stores. I heard something about it. So what do you think? Will there be layoffs? I could hear the concern in my mother's voice. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't calling to criticize or lecture me, but to get information. I don't know, Mom. Nothing specific has been announced yet. Could you find out? You have connections at the office. Connections. My mother still thought I was just a lowly employee who at best could hear rumors from my colleagues. I'll try to find out something. Just hurry, okay? Your father is beside himself. He tossed and turned all night last night. After talking to my mother, I went down to the cafeteria for a coffee. A small group of employees had gathered there, discussing the same topic. Maybe it's for the best, said Gladys Thompson from HR. Biggins has really let himself go in recent years. He doesn't raise salaries or invest in equipment. But he doesn't fire anyone either, Dwight objected. The new guy might decide there are too many of us. Come on, Roxy smiled. You're irreplaceable. Who else knows our delivery route so well? Dwight didn't look convinced. He nervously fiddled with an empty coffee cup. Anyway, we'll find out soon enough, Gladys said. I heard they're supposed to make an official announcement this week. I poured myself some coffee and returned to my office. On the desk was a folder containing employee personnel files. I had asked for it from HR under the pretext of checking supplier contacts. In reality, I needed to study the company's structure. Ontario Fresh Market employed about 800 people, 40 stores, a distribution center, and a head office. The average age of employees was 42. Many had been with the company for more than 10 years. Staff turnover was low, which indicated stability, but also stagnation. I found my parents' files. Dalton Cribbles, warehouse worker at store number 23 on Pine Street, 8 years of service, 3 disciplinary actions for conflicts with colleagues. Last performance review, satisfactory. Salary, $2,400 per month. Bernice Cribbles, cashier at the same store. 5 years of service, 1 disciplinary action for rudeness to a customer. Performance review? Good. Salary, $2,000. Ordinary employees, nothing special. Not the worst, but not the best. Most of the company was like that. After lunch, I went to the store where my parents worked. Officially, it was to check the assortment and quality of service. In reality, it was to see them in a work environment. Store number 23 was located in a residential area in a small shopping center. It was a typical medium-sized supermarket with wide aisles, bright lighting, and a standard layout. Nothing special, but everything was clean and tidy. I saw my father in the back room. He was unloading boxes of canned goods, working slowly, stopping often to wipe the sweat from his brow. At 58, this work was not easy for him, but he persevered. There was no alternative. My mother was standing behind one of the cash registers. Her clear voice could be heard throughout the store. She was chatting with customers, asking them about their day, and giving them advice on what to buy. Some people liked it, while others were clearly in a hurry to pay and leave. I walked through the sales floor, making notes in my notebook. Several shelves were empty. There were delivery problems. Small queues were forming at the cash registers. There weren't enough staff. In the corner was a stand with local announcements, half of which were out of date. These were small things, but it was the little things that made up the overall impression of the store. And the overall impression was, it'll do. Not bad, but not good either. Mediocre. My parents didn't notice me. I deliberately kept to myself, watching them work. My father was lugging boxes around, occasionally arguing with his colleagues about who should do what. My mother was chatting with customers, but she worked quickly and without mistakes. You couldn't fault her for that. Ordinary people doing ordinary jobs. They did what they knew how to do, got paid for it, and didn't think too much about whether things could be improved. They were happy with the status quo, but the status quo was changing. The new owner, that is me, was going to change a lot. Modernize the equipment, revamp the product range, optimize processes. Some employees would be able to adapt to the changes, others would not. In the evening, I returned to the office. The building was almost empty, with only a security guard dozing behind the desk in the lobby. I went up to the director's office on the 5th floor. I had the keys. The lawyers had given them to me along with the rest of the documents. Walter Biggin's office was decorated in a classic style. Dark furniture, leather armchairs, portraits of the company's founders on the walls. On the huge desk were photos of his family and various awards from trade associations. All of this now belonged to me. It was a strange feeling. Not long ago, I was just an ordinary employee who couldn't even get onto this floor without special permission. I sat down at the desk and opened my laptop. The screen displayed financial reports, development plans, and competitor analysis. There was a lot of work to do. I needed to study every aspect of the business, understand what was working well and what needed to be changed. The phone rang around 9 in the evening. It was my mother again. "Ivet, where are you? It's late." "At work." "Again? What kind of boss do you have making you work late?" If she only knew. "I just have a lot of work to do." "Listen, have you found out anything about the new owner?" "Not yet." "Well, try harder. Your father and I are worried sick. They say there will be a meeting on Wednesday and everything will be announced officially." "Okay, Mom. And one more thing." She paused. "Maybe you could put in a good word for us? With the boss? We're family, after all. Family." She only remembered her family when she needed something from me. "We'll see, Mom." After our conversation, I sat in my office for a long time, studying documents. A reorganization plan gradually took shape in my head. Some stores needed to be modernized, others closed. Some employees would have to be retrained, others fired. My parents didn't know yet that their fate depended on their daughter, whom they considered a failure. Tomorrow, that would change. Wednesday began with me waking up at 5 in the morning and not being able to fall back asleep. It was still dark outside my rented apartment, but my mind was already racing with thoughts about the day ahead. Today, I had to announce to the employees who the new owner of the company was. I made some coffee and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. I checked the text of the announcement I was planning to read out loud one more time. A few paragraphs about development plans, job security, and necessary changes. Dry and to the point, without unnecessary emotion. At 6:30 in the morning, the phone rang. It was my mother. "Ivet, are you awake?" "Yes, Mom. I can't sleep either. I've been tossing and turning all night. Today they'll announce who the new owner is. I'm a nervous wreck." There was an unusual anxiety in her voice. Usually confident and talkative, she now spoke more quietly, as if afraid someone might hear. "Mom, it's still early. The meeting is scheduled for 2 o'clock. I know, but time is dragging so slowly. Your father started updating his resume the day before yesterday. He says he needs to play it safe." Her father was looking for a new job. At 58, with a technical college education and experience as a mechanic that ended in scandal, his prospects were not very bright. "What do your colleagues say?" "Everyone's nervous, especially the older ones. The young people aren't so worried. It's easier for them to find something new. But where can we go? Who needs us at our age?" It was true. The job market wasn't kind to people over 50, especially those without a college degree or special skills. My parents understood this and felt vulnerable for the first time in a long time. "Maybe it's not so bad," I said. "The new owner might keep the experienced employees." "I don't know. I've heard that in other companies, the new owners fire the old-timers first. They say young people work more efficiently. My mother paused, then added quietly, Yvette, are you sure you can't find out anything in advance? Anything at all? Mom, I don't work in management. How would I know? But you're smart and educated. Maybe you could talk to someone in management? Tell them your parents are worried? I'm curious. My mother remembered that I was smart and educated, even though just last week she called me a failure who had achieved nothing in life. I'll try to find out something. Thank you, daughter. We're counting on you. After the conversation, I finished my coffee and left for work. There were many familiar faces on the bus. Ontario Fresh Market employees were on their way to the office and stores. Usually in the morning, people read, listened to music, or dozed off on public transportation. Today, everyone was quietly talking among themselves. Near the office building, I noticed more cars than usual. Apparently, many had arrived early. Everyone wanted to hear the news first, or at least exchange rumors with their colleagues. Small groups of employees were crowding the lobby. The security guard looked confused. Usually at this time of day, the building was almost empty, but today it resembled a swarm of excited bees. I went up to the third floor. Colleagues from the purchasing department had gathered in the corridor near the water cooler. Roxy was waving her arms, explaining something heatedly to the others. I heard from Gladys that the documents were signed last week. That means the new owner is already officially in charge. Who is it? Asked Dwight. He looked pale and tired, as if he hadn't slept all night either. No one knows yet, but Merv said the money came from some investment company. Probably a wealthy businessman who decided to expand his portfolio. Rich businessmen like to optimize their expenses, someone remarked grimly, and the biggest expense is employee salaries. The group fell silent. Everyone understood the logic of business, but no one wanted to think about how it might affect them personally. Good morning, I said, approaching my colleagues. Oh, Yvette, Roxy exclaimed happily. Have you heard anything interesting? You have contacts with suppliers, maybe they know something? Unfortunately, no. Everyone's quiet. Strange, muttered Dwight. Usually in cases like this, information leaks out in advance, but here it's complete silence. We dispersed to our offices, but it was difficult to work. Every half hour, someone would come in to share the latest rumors or just talk. Everyone was tormented by the uncertainty. At 11 in the morning, I went down to the cafeteria for coffee. It was crowded. Many had decided to take an early break. Groups of employees from different departments sat at tables, all discussing the same topic. I think it's good that the company was bought, said Gladys from HR. Biggins has gotten lazy in recent years. The new owner might breathe some fresh life into the business. Or squeeze us dry, objected Merv from accounting. Investors usually want quick profits. Maybe it'll be the opposite. Roxy joined the conversation. Maybe he plans to expand the chain and open new stores. Then there will be more jobs. Dreamer, Dwight sneered. New stores are a big investment. It's easier to buy a ready-made business and optimize it. I sat down at a free table in the corner and listened to the conversations around me. The atmosphere was like a hospital ward where everyone was waiting for test results. Some were hoping for the best, some were preparing for the worst, but everyone understood that their fate was no longer in their hands. At 11:30, my mother called again. Yvette, how are you? Have you heard anything new? No, Mom. Everyone is waiting for the official announcement. What's happening at the office? Is there panic? People are worried, that's natural. Is your job in jeopardy? An interesting question. My mother was worried not only about herself and my father, but also about me. Although just a week ago she considered my job frivolous. I don't think so. Purchasing is an important function, we can't do without it. Well, okay. I was already imagining the three of us on welfare. Mom, don't get yourself worked up, nothing is known yet. That's easy for you to say. Your father could barely get out of bed this morning. His blood pressure was high. It's nerves, you know. After lunch, a real crowd began to gather. Employees from the stores started to arrive at the office. Some had been given permission to attend the meeting, others simply couldn't stand the uncertainty and decided to find out the news for themselves. I saw my parents in the lobby. My father was standing against the wall, hunched over and staring at the floor. My mother was nervously fiddling with the strap of her purse and looking around. They looked confused and frightened, not at all as confident as they had been a week ago. My mother noticed me and came over. "Yvette, can you believe they let us come to the announcement? They don't usually invite regular employees to these kinds of events. Maybe the new owner wants to meet the staff in person. Or announce the layoffs in person," my father added grimly. "Don't say that," my mother scolded him. "Nothing is certain yet." But there was no confidence in her voice. For the first time in a long time, my parents didn't know what to expect, and that frightened them. At 10 to 2, everyone gathered in the large conference room on the first floor. It was usually used for meetings with major suppliers or presentations of new products. Today, about 100 people had gathered there, department heads, middle managers, and representatives from each store. My parents sat in the back rows. I took a seat in the middle of the room among my colleagues from the purchasing department. Roxy whispered something to Dwight, who nodded and nervously adjusted his tie. At 2 o'clock, Gladys entered the room with a folder in her hands. She was followed by Merv and several other people from the administration. Everyone sat down at a long table at the front of the room. "Colleagues," Gladys began, "as you know, last week the deal to sell our company to a new owner was completed. Today we will introduce you to the person who now heads Ontario Fresh Market." The room fell completely silent. 100 people held their breath, waiting to hear the name that would determine their future. Gladys looked at the door at the back of the room. "Please, welcome our new CEO." Everyone turned toward the door. Someone began to clap, but the applause sounded uncertain and quickly died down. I got up from my seat and walked to the front of the room. I walked to the front of the hall under 100 pairs of eyes, and each step echoed in the absolute silence. My colleagues' faces were puzzled. They had expected to see a stranger in an expensive suit, but instead, an ordinary employee from the purchasing department was heading toward the microphone. Roxy opened her mouth slightly, and Dwight frowned, as if trying to figure out if it was a mistake. In the back rows, my parents sat motionless. My father looked at me with confusion, and my mother blinked slowly, as if she couldn't believe her eyes. I walked up to the table where the administration was sitting and turned to face the hall. Gladys handed me the microphone, her face professionally impassive, but her eyes betraying her curiosity. "Good afternoon, colleagues," I began, my voice booming through the speakers. "My name is Yvette Cribbles, and I am the new owner of Ontario Fresh Market." There was a murmur in the room. Not applause, not exclamations of surprise, just a low hum of voices, as if 100 people had exhaled at once. Some people were talking to their neighbors, others were just sitting with their mouths open. I waited for the noise to subside and continued. "I understand that this news may come as a surprise. I have been working here as a purchasing manager for the past 5 years and have become very familiar with all aspects of our business. The acquisition of the company was finalized last week." Roxy turned and looked at where I usually sat, as if trying to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. Dwight took off his glasses and wiped them with trembling hands. "Many of you probably have questions about what will happen to the company and your jobs. Let me say right away that we have plans for growth, and they are ambitious. We will be upgrading our equipment, expanding our product line, and implementing new technologies." I paused and glanced at the back rows where my parents were sitting. My father looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time in his life. My mother pressed her hand to her chest and breathed heavily. "As for the staff," I continued, "the changes will affect all levels. Some positions will be reorganized, some eliminated. But there will also be new opportunities for those who are willing to learn and adapt." The room grew even quieter. People understood that this was not just a formal announcement of a change in management. It was a plan for real change that would affect everyone. Over the next 2 weeks, each department will receive detailed information about the upcoming changes. Individual meetings will be held with employees to discuss their role in the new company. Merv from accounting raised his hand. "Can I ask a question? Where did the money come from to buy the company?" "It's a private investment," I replied. "The details of the financing are confidential." He nodded. though his eyes betrayed his desire to know more. Everyone wanted to understand how a simple employee had suddenly become the owner of a company worth millions of dollars. "Any other questions?" I asked. A hand went up in the middle of the room. It was Teresa Nimble, the manager of one of the larger stores. "How long did you plan this transition? I mean, have you been preparing for the purchase for a long time?" "The opportunity arose a few months ago. I studied the company's financials and concluded that it had serious growth potential." That was true, though not the whole truth. I had been thinking for a long time that Ontario Fresh Market could do much better with the right management. The opportunity to buy the company arose when Walter Biggins decided to sell the business and retire. "Meetings with department heads will begin tomorrow," I continued. "The rest of the staff will be notified next week. Everyone will receive a written notice with the time and place." I glanced at my watch. "The workday will continue as usual. Thank you for your attention." The room slowly began to empty. People got up from their seats and left in small groups, chatting animatedly. Some came up to me with questions or just to congratulate me. Roxy was among them. "Yvette, I'm in shock," she said, shaking my hand. "I never would have thought. I mean, of course, you're smart and all, but to buy an entire company—" "Opportunities sometimes arise unexpectedly," I replied. "What will happen to our department? Will the purchasing department remain?" "Of course. In fact, we are planning to expand. We will need to work with new suppliers and develop new markets." Roxy visibly cheered up. "That's great. I was already thinking about updating my resume." Dwight was next. He looked embarrassed and nervous. How should I address you now?" "You can call me by my first name for now," I smiled. "We're colleagues." I wanted to ask about logistics. Will there be changes there too? "Yes, but nothing drastic. The main goal is to optimize delivery routes and reduce order processing time." "I see. What about the staff?" "The effective employees will stay. What's more, there may be promotions for those who perform well." Dwight nodded with relief. He was a good specialist, just too timid. Gradually, the hall emptied. Only I, the administration, and the parents who were still sitting in the back rows remained. My father was looking at the floor. My mother was looking at me, but her gaze was somehow lost. Gladys approached me with a folder of documents. "Yvette, you need to sign a few papers to formalize the transfer of authority." "Of course." While I was looking through the documents, my parents slowly approached us. My mother walked uncertainly, as if afraid of tripping, and my father trailed behind her. "Yvette," my mother said quietly, Can we talk?" "Of course." "Gladys, can we finish the paperwork tomorrow?" "No problem. Goodbye." The administration left, and the three of us remained in the empty hall. My parents stood in front of me, and for the first time in my life, I saw them like this. Confused, uncertain, almost frightened. "Sit down," I said, pointing to the nearest chairs. They sat down, not taking their eyes off me. My mother clasped her hands together, and my father tapped his fingers nervously on the armrest. You really bought the whole company?" my mother finally asked. "Yes." "But where did you get the money? We thought—" "That I'm a failure who has achieved nothing in life?" My mother blushed. "No, it's not that. We just didn't know you had savings. I had investments you didn't know about, shares in technology companies I bought in the early 2000s, plus my own savings." My father looked up. "How much did the company cost?" $4,800,000. He turned pale. My mother opened her mouth but couldn't say a word. "Do you understand now?" I continued calmly. "That a house worth $300,000 wasn't the biggest loss for me?" "Yvette, we didn't know," my mother began. "You didn't want to know. It was convenient for you to think of me as a failure. It justified your attitude toward me. But we didn't mean to. You stole my house and spent the money on yourselves, and then you laughed at my helplessness." My parents sat silently. My father studied his hands. My mother blinked frequently, as if trying to chase away an intrusive thought. "What will happen to us now?" she asked quietly. "What should happen? You won't fire us, will you? We're a family." "A family," I repeated. "Interesting that you remembered that now. Yvette, forgive us. We were wrong. We didn't understand. What exactly didn't you understand? That you can't steal someone else's property? That parents should support their children, not steal from them? The mother began to cry. Quietly, almost silently, but tears streamed down her cheeks. We'll make it up to you. We'll pay you back. Where? You spent it on the car and paying off debts. We'll sell the car. We'll take out a loan. Anything. I looked at my crying mother and gloomy father and felt a strange emptiness. No anger, no satisfaction at their humiliation, just emptiness. Your employment status will be decided on a general basis, I said, just like all the other employees. Effective workers will stay, ineffective ones won't. Are we efficient? Asked my father. That will be determined by the evaluation. It will take place next week. Yvette, my mother wiped away her tears. We understand that we did wrong, but we are your parents. Are you really going to punish us for one mistake? One mistake? You stole my house. That's not a mistake, it's a crime. But you're not going to sue your own parents, are you? I stood up from my chair. I'll think about it. Right now, I have work to do. I have a company to run. My parents also stood up. They looked older in those 30 minutes. Yvette, my mother said at the door, we're really sorry, and we're proud of you. You've achieved what we could never have dreamed of. Thank you, I replied. See you at the graduation ceremony. They left, and I was left alone in the empty hall. It was already getting dark outside. The autumn day was coming to an end. Tomorrow, a new phase of my life would begin. I was no longer just a daughter who could be robbed with impunity. I was the owner of a company, and my parents finally understood that.